This is the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist and an empowerment coach for women. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now here is today's episode. Episode 98. Just a heads up, there is animated adult language in this episode. I know sometimes when you do download your podcast, you can see that it's marked with an E. Just want to say it out loud as well, in case you have little ones listening. Before I dive into today's episode, if you think that perfectionism has been holding you back in your business or life, or you even just struggle with some of the symptoms of perfectionism, maybe you're not even sure, go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/perfectionist. Find out the 10 signs you might be a perfectionist today. Here is today's episode. Well, welcome, sisters. Oh my goodness, here it is, conversation number 5 with my friend and colleague, Tamara Powell. Okay, in episode 81, we discussed why we built our business and the breakthrough of our limiting beliefs, and we continue on that journey of breaking through our limiting beliefs. In episode 85, we talk about labels and constructs, and we really encouraged you to begin to explore what may be holding you back in your business or your life. In episode 89, we discuss the magic of liminal space, or the other phrase is the seasons of change. Then in episode 93, we discuss navigating fears in business and life, especially during this pandemic. But today, we're going to talk about kind of the messy middle, right? The blind spots, the shadow work, and all of that. Oh, cannot wait for this conversation. All right, so if you do not know Tamara, if you're just tuning in, Tamara Powell is a licensed therapist, university psychology instructor, and an empowerment coach who believes life should be lived as a journey that is, quote, anything but ordinary. Her work is specialized to help individuals break free from toxic cycles of distress, dysfunction, and dissatisfaction with life that are created when trying to live according to someone else's rules. Only by living what she calls radical autonomy can one obtain soul-nourishing relationships and a sense of true life purpose and inner peace. Well, welcome back, my friend.
Hey. So excited.
All right. So today we're going to talk about kind of shadow work and blind spots and things that I know we all have, yet I think there's some different definitions of what that may look like or be for some folks. So I'm curious, Tamara, give your definition of what shadow work is for you, or getting curious about those blind spots.
Can I first just say it's a pet peeve of that word?
I'm glad I've already touched the spot.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's hilarious how many of these buzzwords in our own field of psychology make me go, ugh. Mm-hmm. Not because the original users of the words, whoever coined it, meant it that way. It's a catch-22 that if something's going to become popular and help build awareness, you're also going to get a lot of like buzzy, BuzzFeed type psychology, pop psychology with it. Yeah. And shadow work, both in the realms of psychology and also spirituality, has just become this overly used term, in my very biased opinion. Mm-hmm. So I would say what it is not is some airy-fairy, ironically fake deep dive into supposedly scary places that you're going to forever be diving into, is that it's going to be shit that you're not going to be able to handle, that it's only like ancestral karma stuff. I mean, it can, sure, not stepping on anyone's beliefs, but I don't like this idea that we have to go to just shadow work healers to work on ourselves. I think it's much more accessible than that. So I just want to start out with that I don't think it's this inaccessible thing or something that's going to take you forever. Has to. Yeah.
Correct. I just had a conversation with somebody about that yesterday. That no, it doesn't need to take you 20 years to get through that.
Yeah, I think as one hand, we are all humans. We all have things in our quote shadow. There's going to be blind spots. There's going to be things that we need to work on forever. However, it doesn't need to keep us from being able to live life now. And that's my big pet peeve with people saying that they're currently working on shadow work. It's almost like, oh, I got to withdraw from society. Yeah. I need a 6-month sabbatical.
Right.
It is this dark night of the soul that has to consume me. Dark nights of the soul happen, yes.
Yeah.
But not just, Karen cut me off in traffic and now I'm working on my shadow.
Right. Yeah. So, some of the spiritual teachers I talk or listen to, like you're saying, it's like, yeah, you could totally go off to an ashram. You can, take that time away. But the fact is you don't need to. You can do this work right from your own home.
And we recommend it.
Yes.
As therapists and coaches.
Exactly. It's part of it. It's like integrating it now in the live and where you are versus needing to get away from. You actually talk about, I'm going to kind of do a quick side tangent. You talk about, and you've done this in your own like blogs, podcasts, and all of that, but that could be spiritual bypassing too.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we idolize it. Ironically, it's a weird form of bypassing. I think there are people who are drawn to the shadow more than they're drawn to the light. And there's good reason for that. I mean, there's this part of our nature that wants to be authentic and to not put a pretty veneer on things. We want people to feel like they can come to us as they're real and they're raw and, like I said, authentic. And I support that. I mean, sometimes ugliness can be beautiful. Right. And there's like this idea of being the phoenix, rising from the ashes. And so definitely taking a look at your grief and all that it can teach us. So, but I don't think I know, let me own that more boldly, that there is this possibility of getting stuck there. And that's what I struggle with and I get annoyed with, and that I do not like the overly mass marketing to, because I think there's some really great teachers out there, but there's also ones that are mediocre at best, and it's all they quote specialize in. And they'll take your money for years and years and years. Because like I said, technically we're all on a journey. And if all you want is for me to, charge you $150 to give you a ritual to go look at your shadow, and then in 2 weeks you're going to need another one. Yeah. It's lucrative.
Yeah. And I'm making a face. I know nobody can see that, but I'm just like, yeah. And I think as a therapist and a coach, to me, that feels so inauthentic and so out of integrity.
Agreed.
Yeah. And so there is,
Don't send us hate mail, but agree.
Yeah. I just I can't do that.
Yeah. We love you too much to leave you stuck in that. And that's my problem, is that for some people, I see them twirly swirly around this drain of trauma over and over and over and over. And I'm thinking, but when do we get better?
Right. Yeah.
Eventually shadow work is supposed to reintegrate you back into the light. And that's what I'm looking forward to talking with you about today, how that's done. But for some people, I just see them, nope, we're still painting pretty pictures of shadows.
And I think it can also become, again, when our fear is running things, the shadow stuff, right? It's, in a way, it becomes safe to go into that. Then it becomes the excuse of, well, this is why I can't get better. This is why I can't do more in my business. This is why I can't have healthier relationships. This is why I can't do X, Y, and Z. It's like it becomes the excuse versus no, I can move through it. I'm all about going into that messy middle and coming out the other side of it. And sometimes it takes a little longer in the messy middle, yet it's a choice to staying there or moving through it.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So to actually answer your question, my favorite definition for the shadow, or part of it, I actually got from Dr. Lourdes Viado, and it's untapped potential.
Yeah.
And of course, my type 7 loves that reframe. But this side of you, shadow work just can mean your blind spot, the parts that keep tripping you up. You're tripping over your own shadow, so to speak. If you stop, look at it, learn to work with it, and integrate it, now you have this untapped potential at your service.
Right. Right.
But like you were just saying, a lot of people don't get there though.
Right. Well, because then it's like, what I hear from women that I've worked with over the years, and again, I'm not immune to this stuff where it's like, oh, I don't want to go there. Huh? I just like to keep it way over there in the closet in the dark. I don't want to go there. Yet it's what holds me back. It's what keeps me stuck. And that's what I have with the women that I work with. It's like, it helps them stay small. It keeps them in really unhealthy relationships. It keeps them from making the 5 to the 6 to the 7 figures. It stops them from really doing what they love to do because it's like, no, I can't because of this. And it's like, wow, but when we face it, when we shine the light on it, all of a sudden it's not this big, bad, scary thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So what's your definition of shadow work?
Yeah. Well, I like Lourdes's definition too. I think for me, it's the way I think about it, it's more of just like, there's an opportunity to get curious about that part of yourself that was hurt, that was traumatized, that was put away, that was shamed, that was whatever. It's like, let's draw that part out and get curious with it. Because it is all about that integration, that we may need something from that part that will help really wake us up in a whole new way that we would not have been able to tap into or get if we just kept it way away from us and not looked at it.
It's so beautiful. I'm already trying it. My brain's jump into all the tools for it, but
yeah.
I was going to say though, how do you know, Nicole, that there's an aspect of shadow that is popping up that needs to be worked on?
Well, sometimes it's really seriously like smacks me in the face, meaning in the sense like people are like, what are you doing with that? Why is that going on? Or this is like the 3rd time you've said that, but you're not doing anything different. I'm like, oh, crap. Yeah, I hear that. Or other times I call it like this like sneaky part that's like it'll present itself in some of the writings or the conversation I have. I'm like, why does that topic keep coming up? And that's not my intention, right? But that helps me pause and get curious about why am I having these thoughts? Why am I having these type of conversations? Why is this person coming onto my path that specializes in this or talks about this? And it's not judging it. It's just getting curious with it. Right. Which then helps me go into meditation, which helps me go into the journaling part of it. Like, let's get curious. Is there some part of you that's been trying to ignore this? Oh, yeah, I have.
I was thinking for our somatic feeler types, sometimes it's just this clench that hits over and over whenever a certain topic's brought up, or you're in a certain environment, or you're around a certain type of personality.
Yep.
And that's kind of your body and your psyche going, hey, boo-boo. There's something here that is still uncomfortable. It's like that initial wound that you were talking about. You learn to armor around this thing.
Yeah.
But you're so, as my fiance massage therapist would tell you, it's those feelings of shame and sadness and shit get stored in your fascia.
Yeah.
And so when I walk into an environment that suddenly makes me feel like I did at 14 with religious trauma, all of a sudden I get this crazy knot in my right shoulder blade. And that's the invitation to look at your shadow for me. Oh, yeah. Ouch. Here's this clench, either emotionally or physically even.
And again, it's not, I think both that you and I are talking about too, is not being afraid to go there. When we get into this space of curiosity, that's where, it's just, again, messy middle is just that. It's just messy. It's not good or bad. It's just messy. And you and I both have talked about these labels, right? We've got so many labels we live under and own and wear and all of that. It's like when you start taking away the good, the bad, the ugly, the pretty, all of a sudden you're like, it is what it is.
Yes.
So let it be that, and then get curious and go, I do feel that right shoulder blade going, ow, ow. It's like, okay, so what else can it tell me? There's different techniques that I use with clients about going into those parts of the body. It's like, oh, this is so fun. And they sometimes give me this look like, oh my goodness, what?
Crazy sadist, you.
Right. And I'm like, but this is where the fun really is. Let's get curious about it.
Absolutely.
Again, my thoughts are kind of going all over with all of this, but it's,
I would say, do you want to go over some of our favorite tools?
Yeah. Why don't we? What's one thing that you like to do with your clients? What's one of your tools that you like to use with your clients?
I can't ever give you one. I'm a 7. I have all the fun things.
Well, I know you've got many, so we'll start with one. Let me clarify that.
There you go. That's a much better phrase question for me personally. Yeah, I mean, no big shocker. My favorite is the Enneagram to start with, because it literally gives you a cheat sheet to some of the things that you are naturally going to clench around based on the way that you view the world. It will show you some of your pet peeves and what some of the wounds are related to those pet peeves.
Yeah.
And so I like starting there because it's an easy entry point for people to take a look at. So, I mean, any typology system could technically do that, but I am an Enneagram fanatic. And so I have seen a lot of one of the reasons is because it isn't just, oh, here's your strengths, disc finder. Like it shows you, and here's where other people are driven nuts by you, boo. Here is where you're going to struggle in relationships and business if you only keep this narrow, rigid lens with yourself and the world.
Yeah.
So that's where I start. I'm like, learn about yourself first. And then we can move into other things like internal family systems or transactional analysis, if that's your thing.
Yeah, all of those things are beautiful. And there was, as you were saying that, I've got to look up really quick, blanking on the name. So, I like the Myers-Briggs stuff.
Yep.
There is another one that it's about the temperament, and I got to look at Ray Lincoln. So his book, He's a Keeper or I'm a Keeper. He does it in a different way. He takes some of Jung's information and he slightly kind of changes it in how it's stated or how you do kind of the test. But he talks about here's your strengths and here's some areas for potential growth.
There you go. Growth potential, untapped potential.
Yeah. And so like what you're saying, it is about, I don't think we're a continuous evolution.
Yes.
And so, yeah, really getting to know whether it's your Myers-Briggs, your Enneagram number, all of these things. There's so many things that can help you continue to gain insight for you, what your spots that hold you back, the quote, so-called weaknesses, or the things that, just kind of get in your way. And they may also, more often than not, they're learned things. You learn them, you can unlearn them.
Yeah, it's a behavior.
Yeah.
Not a trait.
Exactly. Any other tools you would like to share, my dear?
Yeah, in our house, one of the first things that all 4 members in our family will stop someone in the spot when they're clearly having an emotional reaction is, whoa, what did your brain just tell you?
Yes.
It's just that simple. It's what the hell did I just tell myself?
Yeah.
And then if you can, you won't always find it in the moment, but once you have that, then you can ask yourself, is that true? It's Byron Katie or, Eckhart Tolle, pull back from that space and be like, oh, that's interesting, as you were saying with curiosity. Who does that sound like in my life? Where did I get that idea?
I love
lately for me, lately for me, one of the biggest ones that I didn't even realize is still a struggle is something I specialize in. Hello, that's the way most therapists, but it's religious trauma syndrome. And dealing with any organizational system for me tends to make me feel rebellious and also judged. And I did not really see that judgment aspect until just like last week when my dreams started overlapping. And I was like, why are these 2 things showing up together? Oh, I don't like feeling judged. I mean, who does?
Right.
But once I can see that, then I can work with it. I can take it to my journal, take it to my therapist, take it to a friend and be like, I am really struggling with, not shutting down or not pushing back as a 7 on the Enneagram.
Yeah.
I'm often accused of not being vulnerable.
Really?
Oh, all the time. I know, shocking. We're very transparent, but I'm not being vulnerable. It's a card trick.
Oh, good point. That's a good distinction.
I'll tell you plenty of things, but I'm really sleight of hand. I'm saying, look over here.
Deflect.
Yeah, I'll literally emotionally flash you so you don't look over here. Because I don't want to be vulnerable. Why? Because I don't want to feel judged.
Yeah. And I think, there was a conversation. I just watched a webinar from a couple writers last week. And most of you know that writing is not my forte. And I was writing just again to get some skills because I think it's something I can totally learn. And I just hadn't put the energy into some of this stuff, and still not my favorite thing, but I can learn some skills. But they were talking about, and I think for me, that vulnerability is like, I don't need to work it out in front of everybody.
Mm-mm.
Right. Cause that's for me, that's something I'm like, you just kind of lost me in your leadership if you're working it out in front of me. I think it's things that, yes, I want to work that out kind of behind the scenes. Then I may bring it then to the forefront saying, here's what I worked through and here it's totally possible. So again, all the messy middle stuff that you and I are talking about that, recognizing like, oh, people saying we're not vulnerable. So what could I do differently? How could I shift that if I choose to? Right. Mm-hmm. And then share how I work through some of these things after the fact.
After.
Yeah.
For every business person listening, after. Don't listen to the people telling you to be vulnerable with your audience. Yeah. Fuck that. Not until you will lose money. Because if I'm feeling bad for you, I won't buy from you.
I think that's it too. And then I was having a conversation with a friend of mine too. And it was more of the, like, I need my clients to really join with me on this journey. It's like, no, that is not their job at all. You know, if the part of being in business, and I don't care what business you're in, is more like you're one step ahead. It doesn't mean you're better than, but you've worked through some of this stuff beforehand. Right. Then you have the skills or some ways to be able to help your clients achieve that too. You can't be working it out with them at the same time.
Even so, right now, at the time of this going live, Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed, is still at the top of the charts for great reason.
Yep.
That woman as a 4 on the Enneagram, shout out to all you 4s, you romantic individualists. I mean, good money sells there. Don't tell me art doesn't sell. Mm-hmm. Everything in her books, all of her books, love them. They are written after she's processed.
Correct.
You are getting her vulnerability, but she has told you after she's worked it out in therapy and with her other people. Mm-hmm. You can be very vulnerable. And it's not, the point I want to circle back around to is you don't have to withdraw from life while doing it.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to point out too. It's like, if you, again, I've just listened to her Love Warrior one. It's like, she went through a bunch of things, right? From the eating disorder to, the marriage to all this stuff. And it's like, she worked it out and then told us about it. But it's like, she didn't withdraw from life. She did her day in and day. Like, what's the next right step? What's the next right thing? And for me, I like to take the word right out because it hits my perfectionism. Like, oh, it's got to be perfect. I'm like, oh, dude, no, it doesn't. No. It's like, what's the next thing for me to do?
And I think that really trips women and moms up. I mean, just human beings in general. I see entrepreneurs struggle all the time. There's this cycle of feast and famine. All of a sudden they're producing content. Whoop, where'd they go? Right. They're gone. It's another dark night of the soul, quote unquote. It's another time of them withdrawing, working on their shadow. It doesn't have to be that way. So I'm not saying this to make anyone feel bad if that's been you. I've certainly done that, a few years ago. Mm-hmm. But then you learn, if it's a daily inquiry, curious process of, did my shadow just show up again? Then you can work on it right there and still be doing the dishes, boo.
Right.
Still feeding those babies, still producing, an Instagram post. You don't have to be talking about that stuff, but there's stuff that is still on your heart that you can share.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, it goes back to the both and, where when we get into the dualistic piece of it, it's either or. That's like, I either got to be on all the time, which again, I've seen a lot of marketing that goes around like, you got to be out there. And for HSPs, man, that just does not work. But it's more like I can do it in a way that's more in my rhythm, more in what works for me, and do this over here where I've got the downtime or the off time. But it's really structuring that day. It's being able to create kind of block time sets.
Or your week or month even.
Right.
Some people like to chunk their content out ahead of time.
Right.
They take a weekend and they do the whole next quarter. It's impressive. I haven't done that yet, but I do admire it.
I do too. I was like, man, I have not even come close to that. But it's like, that is beautiful if they're able to do that. So so much of this again is whatever the stories were, whatever you experienced, that doesn't need to define you. You are able to evolve and to shift and to change. if you choose to. If you choose to get curious with that, if you choose to, like you're saying, notice what your body is telling you versus holding you back. But one thing that I do with my clients, go back with like kind of the body sensations. Like if that's the right shoulder, I will say, well, just breathe into that space.
You sound like my therapist.
Yeah, breathe into that space. And is there a color?
Oh my God, you are my therapist.
Yeah, man, this is a technique I learned in grad school, and I love it. It's really, really powerful. I actually think it also comes from, if I remember right, from like psychodrama.
Yeah, it is. He's psychodynamic.
Yeah. So is there a color to it? Is there a sound? Is there a word? Is there a memory? Whatever it may be. And most of my clients, right, they're very heady people. And so my goal is to help them get back into touch with their body, to integrate those two things, because you are not just your head. And when you're able to do that, oftentimes it's like, well, I'm just going to throw out an example. I see a triangle and it's a solid dark blue color. And I'm like, ooh, okay, let's keep breathing into that space, that dark blue triangle. And is there any information that it wants to share with us? Again, if it had a voice, what would it say? Well, it says it's really tight, that this is really pointy, this is a really painful piece. And it's like, oh, beautiful. What else does it have to say, if anything? And you just keep going deeper and deeper into that space without judging it. You're observing it. You're allowing that part of your body to literally speak to you. There is no right or wrong answer to it. It's not weird unless you think it's weird. It's just saying, I'm really allowing myself to go to that space within my body because it has information for me.
Here's the thing. I did think it was weird, but I still felt relief. So
yeah. Well, and again, it's new, it's different. So it can
works.
Absolutely feel weird at first. But the more you do it, it's like, oh my gosh, my body's a wealth of information. Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful thing. And it's not uncommon for the shape, the color, and all of that. The more you do that it starts to like the relief starts to happen. So then it goes from like a dark blue to maybe a light blue, or it gets transparent, or the pointy edges of the triangle all of a sudden become a rectangle, or it gets smaller, but you don't feel as much pain anymore because you gave yourself permission to go there.
Yes. You're right. And I always remind my clients too that, listen, you could think this is hokey as hell, but if you feel the relief, you're not going to care. And you don't realize it, but thanks to metacognition, you're talking to yourself all day long anyway.
Exactly.
Those thoughts are the nightmares that you're worrying about all day, just while you're awake. So what harm would it do you to sit down and look at a part of you or a body part even?
Yeah. Again, it's like you're just saying, it's like breaking it down into a very small section. Now that we're talking about the right shoulder blade, mine's like, okay, I feel painful. I'm like, I know that's because of the way I'm sitting, but
sometimes it is just that. But.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, just pay attention to that. It's not, I've got to scan my whole body. Start out with the whole scan if you need to. See if there's a part that is tight or tense or struggling, and then breathe into that space. Again, out of your head, more into your body, and see what information comes up for that.
So putting you on the spot, but have you worked through a piece of shadow that previously scared the shit out of you or you didn't even know was there?
I know for me, one of my biggest things I think that I have worked through was when I went to grad school. I mean, that's still one of my biggest pivoting points in my life because I moved across the country. I'm originally from Indiana and I moved to California. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a job.
That's culture shock.
Yeah. So it was a brand new destination, but when I visited the grad school, I was like, this is like me coming home. And that's literally how it felt for me. So when I moved, I had some family members that were really not too happy about stuff. And it was not a pleasant experience, but did it anyways. And I am so grateful that I took the risk. I took the chance. I've met some incredible people through that experience. I had some life-altering moments through that. But it was facing the fear of, oh my gosh, I'm going to disappoint somebody. Oh my gosh, they may not like me anymore. Oh my gosh.
There it is.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, they're not going to accept this. Oh my gosh, I may totally fail at this. Oh my gosh, can I actually create a business from this? Oh my gosh. I mean, all kinds of stuff, right, that I talk about. But I did it. And so now, whenever I'm starting to make a pivot or I try something new, I'm like, dude, this is not you moving across the country. And the fact is you already did it. So you already proved yourself you can. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay, next.
I love that. So when you worked on that stuff through grad school and you integrate it, what was your growth potential? What did you find trapped in there, that fear?
I think one of the main things, and maybe more will come up as I keep talking, but is that I'm more than what the messages that I was given. That I truly am not, I was not born into this world to please the family members, to please my parents. And I was, And so that was actually a conversation I was just having with another podcaster yesterday. I was being interviewed. And, that perfectionism and people pleasing is the thing. I like to say I'm the recovering perfectionist because it still comes up, but I'm more aware of it. And it's like, I'm not born to live the life you want me to live. I have been born because I have my own, there's another mission. It's more of a divine mission that I am on. And it's not about you.
I love that because I know so many women, including myself, can relate to that. So part of your particular shadow is the need for perfectionism. It felt like a need growing up.
Yeah.
And yet you, through a bunch of experiences, of course, the universe kept giving you opportunity to work on that growth edge.
Over and over, man.
You found the untapped potential of complete freedom and authenticity. There was a mission in there. You weren't born to please other people. You were born here to serve those you were called to serve.
Yeah.
God, we all need that.
Yeah. And if I would not have moved away, if I would not have actually been following the calling that I had been shown since very young about people telling me their life stories, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right.
And still accounting.
On the other side of things, if you had chosen the path that sadly many do and you allowed your shadow to be too intimidating or too all-encompassing where you just sat and worked on it for years and years, we wouldn't be having this conversation either.
Correct.
She would just be like, oh, I'm a recovering perfectionist. Let me just go to another, perfectionist anonymous meeting.
Well, and I think more than anything, I probably would even be thinking that. I would just know that my life is miserable, that my soul energy was being sucked away, that the odds are I'd be extremely depressed.
Yes.
And
or anxious.
Yeah. Or really anxious about things and just like, wow, life just sucks. Everything about life sucks. And I wouldn't be in my own power.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
You're beautiful.
Well, thanks, man. How about for you? It's been something that, and I know, well, again, part of you just kind of said it too, the spiritual piece of it, of really pivoting. I don't even know if pivoting is the right word for that.
Yeah, pivoting's a good word because it's not that either, your perfectionism and my religious trauma is not a part of us. That's another thing that people get really upset about or they misunderstand about, empowerment coaching or even personal development work often gets accused of being too cognitive, right? Especially for us cognitive types. It's not that that's not still a part of our story and part of our DNA, but that it doesn't restrict us any longer.
Yeah.
And so for me, realizing, especially in my 30s and now 40s, how much the literal fear of hell and judgment and not being able to own my own experience and my own body because it wasn't mine. And I can't even trust my own body or intuition because it's based in sin and the, flesh nature. Has insidiously impacted me in ways that I didn't even realize. But something as small as making an Instagram post, shockingly, if I am afraid of judgment or trusting my own intuition.
There you go. I was going to come back to that.
Yes.
Just writing that down. Yeah. Because when you don't trust your body, when you dismiss that, you're not going to trust your intuition.
Yeah. And it's led me into unhelpful relationships. That are having devastating consequences to this day still. It's definitely held me back in business. You hit a certain income level and then you don't go any higher if you're not willing to bust through that. So that's my big one, realizing I didn't realize, I thought I was just brought up in a bubble of Jesus and Disney, and doesn't that sound pretty?
Yeah.
Well, there was a shadow there. There was a blind spot that I felt intuitively. I was always armored, but I did not have words for it.
I think the fascinating thing too about growing up, right, where your intuition, we're all born intuitive. I mean, I just fully believe that, but I know as kids, right, it's like that gets kind of poo-pooed out. It's like gets dismissed, especially for highly sensitive folks too. That intuition, the spiritual path, is part of your DNA. And you and I talk about this often. It's like your soul's going to keep tapping, your soul's going to keep coming back. And if you're choosing not to follow it, it can get louder, or it's like you're dimming that light. So then you're going to have the dis-ease of living too.
Yes.
But part of the intuition piece of it, when you are doubting that, it holds you back in so many areas of your life and it can get you into the trouble of like, well, this doesn't seem like it's a safe relationship, or this doesn't seem like it's the best business decision for me. Well, then what will happen is that dismissiveness, the training was, don't trust that, you need to do it this way, and this is the way to do it because otherwise God's not going to like you, or what have you. You keep disowning that part of you. And that's just, to me, that just makes me really sad even to think that, right?
Right.
It's like, this is part of it. It's like, wow, that's their story. That's their projection. And if you tap into that, yeah, it's infinite possibilities, because we truly are all connected on that cellular level. And the universe, God, the divine spirit cannot bring in what you are really needing or wanting, because yeah, that armored up is there and you're trying to live someone else's life.
Bingo, dogma.
Yeah. And that just, it's just awful. So painful, truly painful.
Truly painful. And yet, like you, very liberating once I can come to see it and hold space for that part of myself that I exiled with her powerful intuition and bodily autonomy.
Yeah.
And allow her to come back. My knees may shake, as they say, but I still have to speak my truth.
Yeah. And the fascinating thing is, right, the more that we follow that intuition, the more that we give her the space that she needs to come forward, the more confident she becomes, the less the fear takes over. It may pop up like, whoa, what are you going to do? And it's like, dude, back it up. I've got this.
Right.
Because now you've got more evidence of how you're able to do this and how what works for you may not work for others. And that is totally okay. We're not all boxes.
Thank you for preaching. Yes.
Yeah. It's just, there's just some beautiful stuff when we follow our true nature, our true calling. And like you're saying, it's not all about rainbows and sunshine and being happy all the time. But when you're not exploring this stuff, when you're not getting curious, it will impact the bottom line of your business. It does. So this work is so incredibly important to get curious and using some of the tools that Tamara and I are sharing. And if you've got other ones, then great, use those. But set aside time, I say every single day, to keep working on that so you can continue to evolve.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, reach out to Tamara and I. We'll have all that in the show notes too.
We got you. Yes.
All right, my dear. I know we can talk about this for hours because it's just one of our passions.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we need to share before we kind of wrap it up, or anything that I have forgotten to talk about?
No, I just want to reiterate that shadow work is such a powerful thing, but it is absolutely practical and accessible.
Yeah.
And you just need to continue to find tools that align with you. I bullet journal.
Yep.
I talk to friends. I have a therapist I meet with biweekly.
Yep.
Regardless, just because there's always something there, just to have, another way of going,
Well, and it goes back to, right, when we have somebody therapist, coach, who has more, not necessarily there's experience, but there's also, again, they're at a different level of growth than we are. A previous mentor of mine, she's like, I heard this concept before, and I can't remember if I shared it or not, but it's like, if you're sitting inside the bottle, you can't read the label on the outside.
Right. That's beautiful.
So that's kind of, again, our blind spot, our shadow work. It's like, I can't see it unless it's getting reflected back to me. So when people reflect back my patterns of like, dude, you've been doing this for a while. It's like, oh crap, I have. Thank you. Right. Then that's the helpful part of it. But if I'm in it and I'm not getting any of that reflection back, or I'm not seeking out to help with that reflection, then I'm going to stay where I'm at. And it's a choice, but you don't need to.
Well said.
Yeah. All right, ladies. So again, if you don't know where Tamara is located, how to get a hold of her, she's at aryatherapy.com, and I will have all her information, social media stuff, all that good stuff on the show notes as well. Yeah. And I'll give the link again for what she recommends regarding the Enneagram test that's out there, the assessment that's out there, so you can have access to it. And I'll put the book mentions as well from Ray Lincoln, so you guys can look at that information too. So Tamara, thank you again for such a fun, loving, expansive conversation. And again, taking the fears away of like, let's get kind of down and dirty in a sense of let's do that emotional work so we can come out to the other side and keep creating even more, being even more what we're called to do.
Truly my honor. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Wondering if perfectionism is holding you back in your business or life? Or just maybe it's impacting all of your relationships? Well, head over to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/perfectionist and receive your 10 signs you might be a perfectionist today. Till then, take care.